And welcome back to Stanny Boy Reviews. I'm your host, Stanley. Thank you for taking the time to check out my channel and to talk about my favorite horror films and sometimes your favorite horror movies. I don't know. I don't even know you, so you might hate these movies. Last week, we discussed an early 80s trash fire called Frightmare. And this week, we are staying in the same decade, but we are traveling out of Tromaville and over to Italy to talk about our first Italian slasher called Stage Fright. So grab your owl masks, grab your terrible English dubbed voiceovers, have a seat. I'm never getting up, so I'm already seated, and let's talk about Stage Fright, ladies and gentlemen. Stage Fright, also known as Deliria, was directed by Michele Soavi, a protege of Italian horror director master Dario Argento, who should not need any sort of introduction, but I guess I'll explain him to you anyway, just in case you don't know who that is. He is responsible for masterpieces like Suspiria, Phenomena, otherwise known as Creepers, and Inferno, amongst other titles, and also the father of Asia Argento. Michele himself got started in the business as an assistant director, and later as an actor in Lucio Fulci films like City of the Living Dead, and then again went back to assistant directing for people like Joe D'Amato, subsequently appearing in D'Amato's films. Although he didn't feel he was ready to direct just yet, he accepted the opportunity to direct a little movie called Stage Fright in 1987, also produced by Joe D'Amato. The script was written by a guy named Lou Cooper, but here's a fun fact. Lou Cooper was born Luigi Montefiore and would go on to use the name George Eastman when he would appear in movies as an actor. And he would play the masked killer in this movie. Earlier in his career, would play opposite Tisa Farrow, yes, Mia's sister, in another Joe D'Amato directed film called Anthropophagus, where he played a deranged cannibalistic killer who eats his wife's unborn child. And his wife. He eats her too. I guess it's easy to get sidetracked when there's not a lot of production history on these movies that I'm discussing, so I guess we're just gonna get into it. Stage Fright, also known as Aquarius in other parts of the world, like America, is about a theater group who are in the midst of grueling rehearsals for a musical production about a pretend murderer that is just days away from opening night. The play is directed by an unhinged and coked out man named Peter. Kill her! And the star is Alicia, who has sprained her ankle and needs medical attention, so she is taken away by a stagehand to a local urgent care that is actually a mental hospital. And of course, upon returning to the theater, they've unknowingly brought back a psychotic serial killer. Said psychotic serial killer has decided to take over the production and start butchering everybody in the cast and crew in sadistic, brutal, awful, disgusting ways. Oh, and he has decided to use the same mask that the pretend murderer in their own musical is supposed to be wearing. Believe it or not, I was a theater kid. That's gonna come out tomorrow. Well, I was. So I connected with this movie in a number of ways. Clearly not because my high school productions ended in mass murder and mayhem. Imagine if they did. But as a first-time viewer, I was kind of taken back in a fun way to my high school days and being on the stage. I had a lot of fun with this movie. And this makes me kind of sound like a crazy person because obviously a lot of people are ripped apart by another crazy person. I'm not insane. But in all real talk, what a beautiful movie. It is so well shot, it is so well directed by Soavi, and the Italians certainly knew how to do things, especially horror films back in the 80s. I think that you can really tell that Soavi was a product of Argento and Fulci and Italian greats, and that he worked with these people. He may not have felt ready to tackle the slasher genre just yet, but I will say that he handled it quite well. From the opening shot to the final frame, I was along for the ride. While there are a lot of movies that are done exactly like this and to death, I haven't really quite seen anything like Stage Fright. So this was refreshing, it was entertaining, there was a lot done right. So I was as happy as a little gay horror-loving little clam could be. Whatever the that means. Most of the time, anyway. Because I had a few things I didn't love, and most of them were forgivable, but some I couldn't let slide. And most of those things were script-related. Now, I understand that without our final girl going to a mental hospital at the beginning of the movie, we wouldn't have the rest of the movie. But it was the stupidest thing I had ever heard of in my entire life. It just literally made no sense for anybody to go to a mental hospital to get a sprained ankle looked at. I don't care how close this mental hospital is to you, it was just absurd. In Tromaville, I could possibly get behind this outlandish idea, but anywhere else, drive to your local urgent care. But maybe in Italy, they do things differently. So who am I? And another thing, speaking of our final girl, she was the most boring character in this movie. That made things hard for me because we're supposed to be rooting for her the entire last half of the film. She was basically a cardboard cutout of a character. I just did not care about her at all. And at one point, she disappears for nearly 20 minutes of the film and at probably the most crucial part of the movie, and we are left wondering what happened to her. Even the writer didn't want her in the script. So that speaks high volumes on her. Maybe not the actress, but definitely the character herself. And that left me wondering, why couldn't we have had Laurel be the final girl? But I'm always rooting for the bitch at the end of the day, and Laurel was a perfect bitch.
So what are we gonna do now?
And not every final girl can be Sydney Prescott or Laurie Strode, so... As far as everything else goes, I loved a good majority of the rest of the actors here. I really liked the guy who played Peter. And even Lou Cooper, Luigi Montefiore, whatever his name was, who played the masked killer, gave me the super duper heebie-jeebies. It was a really sincerely effective performance. Even though he was wearing this big owl mask the entire time, you could still see his eyes. All we need are those eyes, and it worked. And the finale sequence. It might have taken a little bit to get there, but once we get there, it was weird and dreamlike. I was on the edge of my seat, and there was a moment where I yelped out loud. And I was watching this by myself. So yeah, Stage Fright definitely checks off all the little slash marks, I guess you could say, for a little slasher movie done right. And on Stanny's Stab-O-Meter, I am prepared to give this 3.5 stabs. Again, there were a few script squabbles that I just am not willing to let go. The final girl was a bore, and there's one death scene that, despite how cool and gory it is, didn't really make any sense because there was a sound effect that didn't make its way into the final cut. And I didn't like that. I don't f*** around here. But all in all, I think that Stage Fright was spooky, it was fun, it had a cool premise, a terrific and scary setting, it had wonderful kills, and a daunting killer with a mask that actually scared me. So what do you think, guys? Has anybody out there seen Stage Fright? Do you plan on watching Stage Fright? Let me know what you think in the comments. And don't forget to follow me on social media. I am on Instagram, I am on Twitter, and I am on TikTok. And guys, please take this opportunity to subscribe. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for being here. I'll see you soon. Take care. My loneliness.